with what we've been doing. Definitely not satisfied, not even close. We've had some good, some bad. I feel like overall special teams were a work in progress, but I do feel like we have the guys to work and the guys that have been working, and it's been fun to work with this group across the board. Whether you're talking about returners, cover guys, specialists across the board, a mix of old and young. It's been fun working with these guys, but that's what we've been doing throughout this season and also through this bye week, just working on improvement and focused on improvement each and every day, and see where we go, see how good we can be. Who's have questions?
Yeah, David Eichel, HawkeyeInsider.com. LeVar, appreciate the time. Reese coming out 2 weeks ago had that low punt. Obviously, Troy took advantage of it. But then next week,
you saw that?
I love it. Man, once or twice. Next week, he was just named Grey Guy Punter of the Week for a true freshman that really has not played, being from out of the country, out of the continent, quite frankly. What about him allowed him to respond in that way, to have his best game so far, and just, I guess, how do you kind of coach him? Did you say anything to him over the course of the week, or just how did he sort of respond in the way he did? Because he really played a huge factor in that first half.
Yeah, for sure. I think a couple things in regards to Reese. I think if you look at both of those two games back to back, they're sort of indicative of how he's been. Where there's been some stuff that's like awful, bad, but there's also been stuff that's really, really good. And we've all seen the really good in practice. Started to see that last week in the game at Minnesota. There's no question that he and along with his teammates in the punt unit were a factor in the game in controlling field position. I thought he had an excellent game, his best game to date. That's more like what we've seen in practice. So we're striving for consistency. As far as like leading up to that week in Minnesota, coming off the Troy week, he knew it wasn't his best game. He knew that he had some errant punts in there and one that cost us a touchdown. To be frank with you, I was a little bit shocked. I've never seen that here. We haven't given one up like that. I had to look it up. I told the kids I've never in my life seen it at Iowa, and I looked it up. It was 2015 to Christian McCaffrey. We gave one up. But my point is, it wasn't just him in that either. Our coverage was not good. They all heard that pretty pointedly from me at halftime, and also the next day on Sunday. And kind of on the side, one of the things I think that's interesting, we have these iPads on the sideline now. It's probably like a player's worst nightmare because kids will always tell you, like, kickoff coverage, coach, I got double, and the other guys, I got double, and all you guys can't get double. There's only 11 guys on the field, but then you get to the sideline, you immediately see what happened as a coach, and then it's not the best for players sometimes because they see it differently on the field, right? Because they're playing. But overall, in regards to that, I think he had a really good week leading up to Minnesota. And also I feel like some of the things, the focal points were being the aggressor, being on the attack, throwing the first punch, not waiting 2 or 3 punts and taking punches in the face and then I'm going to go punt the ball. So that was a focal point. I think he responded well and the unit responded well and had a great day.
Scott.
Yeah, Scott Dockerman from The Athletic. I wanted to ask you about Drew Stevens. He hasn't lacked for confidence at all, but last year it seemed like he was a little bit humbled by the way the season ended, and yet he's come out really strong, hasn't missed a kick yet this year. In what ways did he make strides? Was it between the ears? Was it his consistency, or how has he been able to take that step forward?
I think all the above is what he's improved upon. You use the word confidence. I think Drew had confidence last year. I think it was false confidence. I think he would be one of the first to tell you that last year. I think we talk about in our room about confidence being a feeling, an emotion, right? Whereas conviction is like it. There's no other way to see it than you're convicted in what you're doing. I think Drew now is convicted with what he's doing. He's convicted with his routine in practice. He's convicted with his routine away from the building. He's much more mature, much clearer head. He's actually reading now, which I never thought I'd get Drew Stevens to read, but he's reading. I'm sure his mom will be pleased to hear that. It's probably a page or 2 a day, but he's working on it, and I think that's helped him, right? You talked about, is it between the ears? A lot of it for Drew is between the ears, and I've just seen this kid grow and mature every single day. And Coach referenced it the other day. I'm like, man, this kid he's playing lights out right now. And I think he's quiet. I think it's very quiet. I'm glad you noticed it, because on the national scope, I think it's very quiet. But I think there's a tiger in there getting ready to let loose, and we've all seen it in practice, and we're excited to be around him. And not to mention, he has really good setup men with his snapper Luke Elkin, who's drastically improved from last year. Makes the operation much cleaner. Ty Nissen is the holder for him. That's been better. The protection's been better. So all across the board, I think from field goal standpoint, it's been better. Drew's kicking off very well right now too, which again doesn't always get noticed or seen. You know, 'cause everyone's looking for the tackle, but he's kicking off very well.
Adam Jacoby, Hawkeye Banking, thanks for your time today. When you've got a guy like TJ Hall who had a couple hiccups on defense against Troy, and then he had that penalty on punt return for you guys last Saturday, how do you make sure that you're upholding the extremely high standards of how special teams ought to operate while still making sure that his confidence stays up for the next week and the next time that you're going to be asking him to do something in a competitive game?
Yeah, I think if you talk about TJ in particular, I'm a big TJ Hall fan. I'm a believer in TJ Hall as both as a special teams player and a defensive player. I don't know what Phil said earlier, but I know he believes in him as well. TJ's a young guy, young player, and my message to him was like, man, I believe in you. I've seen you do it on special teams. I've seen you do it. I wouldn't put you in the game. You know, a year ago, before he got injured, he was one of our best gunners, one of our best corners in punt return, and so we've all seen him do that. You know, now he transitions. He's got a role on defense. It's a little bit more involved on defense, and then I'm asking him to play special teams too. It's a lot for a young guy. So I think, just over the course of time, believing in the young man and letting him work through some of the difficulties and just keep coaching him and keep believing in him. And, again, I'm a big TJ Hall fan. So he's an awesome young man. He's got a great head on his shoulders, got a great future in both special teams and on defense, and just keep believing and keep working with him.
Mitch at KJ, and just wondering about Devin Hillson's special teams journey. It feels like it's just a matter of time till he snatches a run off the punter split or something like that. He's been so close.
Yeah, no, it's fun working with Devin. He hasn't played on offense or defense yet, to my knowledge, that I can think of. But from a special team standpoint, he's done really well for us. And again, you talk about quietly, doesn't get the stats sometimes. You watch our kickoff coverage. He's not the guy making the tackle, but everybody knows where number 20 is. He's disrupting the whole return, and you have to account for him all the time. It's no different than punt block. You have to account for the guy, even if he's not getting home or not blocking the punt. But been happy with him, been pleased with him. I think it's just something that he can really do and do well for us here. We had a visitor in camp named Scott Pioli, who was here talking about a guy at New England Patriots that they had with Matthew Slater, who made a living playing special teams, and he has one career catch to his name in college and in pro football. Like, that stuff's out there for guys that they really want to do it and they really focus on, they really commit to it. So I think Devin could, has some of those characteristics. I'm not calling him Matthew, I'm not calling him a Hall of Famer yet, but again, those are the things that I want guys like Devin thinking about, because you can still make an impact on this football team, even though if you're not playing defense or playing offense or scoring touchdowns that way.
John.
Hi, LeVar Woods, the Cedar Rapids Gazette. You were mentioning Drew with the kickoffs. It seems like maybe I'm looking too much into the numbers here, but it seems like his hang time is up, and we're also seeing more returns. Is that kind of a strategy? Is that just who you're going up against?
Are you charting these?
Got Pro Football Focus.
Okay. Oh God, don't get me started on that. Because we have to go back and time them all. Like, where do they get these numbers? But anyway, his numbers are up. His hang time is up, which is good. And again, it goes back to what he's been doing. And he's kicking the ball really well. And hang time's up there. Guys are returning it, and they've been paying for it. You go back to the game last week. We feel like I think it was 6 kickoffs Drew had, and 4 of them were returned, and none of them got past the 21. That's we talk about every game. We want to set the tone, right, at the beginning of the game, whether it's kick return or kickoff. We're setting the tone. Their returner brought it from 5 yards deep, which is ill-advised in any league with that kind of hang time, and he paid for it. And it's been helping us psychologically, I think, as a football team. It's also been helping us with field position. And you guys all know special teams, and field position turns into points for us, and that's part of our game plan each week.
Hi, LeVar, Chad Leistico, Des Moines Register.
I love how you guys introduce yourselves.
Well, it's for the YouTube.
Okay.
Actually, you can talk about a prospect because he's your son. I was just curious, like how.
I don't want to talk about it.
Well, as a father, like you're kind of detached a little bit from the senior season, right? I mean, somewhat because you're coaching the Hawkeyes. So I guess how do you experience that? And is this a chance on a bye week where you get a chance to be more involved than maybe you could be?
Yeah, first and foremost, I mean, I'm gonna get emotional thinking about this because Coach Ferentz is unbelievable, and he's allowed me to, if we're not on the road, allowed me to be at my son's games, or at least part of them, which is something that's really special to me and my family, and he knows that, and I really appreciate that from him, because it's allowed me to see a guy that I don't really get to see all that often in season, get to see his games, and yeah, it's just fun watching him grow and mature as a person, as a player as well. But credit to Coach Ferentz for allowing that to happen, and I do appreciate some other people in here that take videos and post it on Twitter, because again, I don't see everything, but then I get people send me the stuff, and I'm like, man, I never saw that. That's awesome. Tyler has done that, and some other people have done it as well. So I really appreciate that.
Tom.
Hey, LeVar. Tom Kicker, Hawkeye Report.
Hi, Tom. Great to meet you.
Nice to see you, Tom. I want to go back to the Iowa State game. Did you, at the end of the game, did you try to pitch maybe Drew kicking that field goal at the end? And what is Drew's range in your mind?
You're right up the alley right now. No, to be honest with you, we weren't thinking about a field goal at that time because we weren't quite in range. But I think after we looked a little bit further and talking about situational football, like, hey, if this came up again, what would we do? And that's something Drew has practiced. I know you guys have watched the pro game and see Harrison Butker or other kickers kick these super long field goals, how they adjust their stance and adjust their approach, and that's something we've worked on. But that's quite a ways away. But Drew has a very strong leg. I mean, I don't want to talk specific numbers, but we've all seen him make it from the logo and beyond. So in practice, but again, it's practice.
Jack.
I love first off, Taylor, one makes sense. A lot of fun watching you on Fridays. Question, Jack, you go with Casey or Dean. Prefacing this with, obviously, you've forgotten more about this stuff than we'll ever know, but just watching on the field, sometimes with Caden Legion, when he has the ball in his hands, he can take it, but sometimes I feel like just from our angle, he's going after balls that make you feel like, ooh, should he have just caught it, or should he have just let it bounce? You can tell me if I'm barking up the wrong tree here, but like, is that something you've talked to him about, or is this a total process thing, like he's good enough with the ball in his hands that you're okay with him taking some risks?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, anytime Caden Legion has the ball in his hands, it's good for the Hawks, because the guy does have the ability to go the distance whenever he has it in his hands. We all saw that the first game, right? On a punt return, he brought it back and got called back. But as a punt returner, you have to have nerves of steel back there. You got to be a good decision maker, and sometimes you have to decide: is the reward worth the risk? And those are things that we work on and talk about and go through scenarios and practice over and over. But I think anytime Caden has the ball in his hands, it's good for Iowa. And so we're trying to get him the ball whenever we can, and the guys on the unit are trying to help him out with it. We're going back to him specifically. Like, he's pretty fearless, and that's one of the first traits you look for in a punt returner.
Three more. Elliot.
Hey, LeVar, LA Clough Hawkeye Beacon. Got some video.
Thanks for the photos.
Yes, I was just gonna say, just posted a couple this last weekend. So I was actually gonna ask about Caden as well. Clearly some explosive plays in the punt return and some good kick returns as well. I think 2 or 3 that were pretty large ended up being called back because of penalties. I guess, what's your reaction on that, and how do you clean that up as we go forward?
Yeah, it's been a focal point. Kind of what's going in the season as well, because if you recall our last game that we played, or not last game, but the Big Ten championship game, we had 2 huge returns brought back by penalty, just dumb penalties, to be honest with you. And so those things are addressed, and those are things that we're trying to focus on. How can we be better in that regard? Is a penalty, is it a silly, lack of judgment? Is it a dumb penalty, if you will? Or is it an effort penalty? And effort penalties you're able to live with a little bit more. Like TJ Hall, to me, that's effort. He's working, he's hustling, he's scrapping. Next thing you know, he ends up in front of the guy when he wanted to be slightly behind, and you get tangled up and fall down. And I think it's an emphasis too in officiating with penalties, particularly in the punt return game. It seems like nowadays, the old days, it'd be people get their heads knocked off. And that was part of the deal. You'd set walls, you'd knock people off, and blindside block people, which is now illegal. And now it's like anytime someone's on the ground, it's a flag. Which when you watch the tape, is it a flag? It's incidental. Their feet get tangled. So we're constantly focused on trying to keep guys up, keep them off the ground, and trying to eliminate some of those penalties through technique that we're working. Again, that's part of the bye week, something we're trying to clean up as well.
Go on.
Owen Sebring, KG It's good to meet you.
It's great to meet you all.
I want to talk about some of the guys that you've had a chance to recruit and bring to the Hawkeyes. I mean, some of your old Beef Bowl rivals and Reese Vandesy and Zach Lutmer, and I assume you had a hand in getting Hayden Large over here. Just some guys who come from your recruiting zone that have really stepped up in some big ways for Iowa this year.
First off, those three are rotten kids. They're awful. No, they're awesome. Like, so much fun to work with, so much fun to be around every day. You talked about Zach and Reese right away. I mean, they went to my rival high school. I know their coach. Grew up competing against those guys. Grew up competing against Reese's dad. And Zach's dad was the coach of the basketball team that used to pound us when we played them. But it's just fun seeing these guys, you know, because I know their families, know how they grew up, and get a chance to see them kind of live out their dreams and actually try to help coach them. It's a lot of fun. You ask Hayden Large, and you know, I hope I'm not stepping out of bounds saying this, but I told him this. I told his coach and Coach Hodge that, man, if we had two Hayden Larges, we'd be a better football team. I promise you we would. Because the guy's high effort, high energy. He's trying to knock your head off whenever he can. He's a big dude. He's a lot of fun to be around. You know, sort of lucked into that. You know, and I throw another one in there with Ben Kickricks. You know, from even though he's from Sioux County, he's not quite Lyon County. He had to move to Lyon County. His family moved to Lyon County just to get closer to us. But he got a bright future too. He's just sitting behind three seniors right now that are pretty dang good. So they're awesome kids and fun to work with, and you know, they're grinders. They're trying to be in there every day, trying to learn more, push, and see how good they can be. So it's a lot of fun.
Last question, Ethan.
Ethan Petrie, Quad City Times. Drew said that he went from being a field kicker previously to being more precise in his approach. Where do you settle on like field kicker versus more precise kicker? And then how did you settle on the Twin Thieves for the off-season reading material?
Oh wow, he went that far, huh? Did he tell you about the other book?
No.
No, he just talked about Twin Thieves.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back, I'm glad he finally said this, that you can't just do everything off field, because emotions get involved, right? And things like that cloud your judgment. So, but Drew has definitely become more systematic in what he does. And the other book that we read was a book called, I'm gonna lose this, Golf: The Sacred Journey. And it talks about a pilot and his checklist that he goes through right before he tries to put the plane up in the air. And so as a kicker, as a specialist, you've got to go through your checklist to make sure everything's buttoned up and ready to go before you actually approach and try to hit the ball. You know, kicking and punting is a lot like golf. I'm an awful golfer, okay, but I can watch it and see like how to do things. I can't do it myself. It's sort of like kicking and punting, but I think if a guy goes through a checklist and he's checked all the boxes and he knows, then he's got the confidence, the conviction to go after the kick, the results usually turn out. And I think Drew's doing that right now, where it took us a while to get him to that point, to believe in that, but he's doing it and doing well with it.
Okay, thank you, Coach.
Got it. Thank you guys.
Thanks, LeVar.
Thank you guys.